Hello everyone! Welcome to another episode of I've Been Playing. This week we're talking about Saints Row. Now I'm sure if you've been on YouTube at all in the past week or so, you've already heard plenty about this iteration of Saints Row. Before we start, I just wanted to address the fact that because of all of the vitriol that was being spewed before this game even officially came out, it was hard to give it a fair shot. From some of the bugs people experienced, I don't think it's completely unwarranted, but I do think it's a little unfair. Also, while I played and enjoyed parts of both Saints Row 2 and 3, I've never played a full Saints Row game, and so I don't have quite the perspective that big fans of the series may have. I'm just gonna start by saying that while I have many things about the game I personally don't enjoy, I did try to give it a fair shot, and I don't think it's nearly as bad as every alarmist on YouTube is trying to clickbait you into thinking. So, if you are unaware, Saints Row is a reboot, essentially, of the Saints Row franchise, because they went a little ridiculous in 4, because you were the president and then you were in space, and there was some stuff, I haven't played that one, I don't fully know what's in it, but it went way to the ridiculous ends of things. So they wanted to reset the series. So my understanding is that this Saints Row is supposed to be more like Saints Row 1 and 2, and probably more 2, because I think Saints Row 1 took itself the most seriously. Although there's an argument to be made that it's more like that one then. This one almost seems like a prequel reboot because you, as the main character, are the boss establishing the Saints. They're not known yet. You make them. So if you want to get technical and link this to the other games, my understanding is that it technically is the first one. This is why reboots need to stop. It just makes things confusing. So anyway, you, as with the other games, can make any character you want. You can have all sorts of ridiculous outfits and customization options. You can change with an app or in a wardrobe at a whim, anything you want. And I'm going to be honest, a large part of the reason I rented this from Gamefly day one is because I had already made my character in the Saints Row boss factory and just kind of wanted to get that out of the way. You also, in theory, have a lot of the same things going on. You are, of course, technically in charge of the Saints. You're in charge of recruiting them, in charge of establishing them in the first place. You have a base, a headquarters that you can customize, which I believe was a thing in the others. I could be wrong. Like I said, I've never played a lot of any of them, so correct me if I'm wrong about any of this stuff, because I know I probably will be. And there are also a bunch of wacky side things you can do. I say wacky side things, but they're not really that wacky, most of them, which I personally think is the appeal of Saints Row. It's ridiculous. It's supposed to be ridiculous. They went all out and perhaps too far ridiculous with Saints Row 4 because they kind of wrote themselves into a corner, which is why this game exists, but the wackiness is the appeal, am I wrong? So you do have occasional side missions and side quests, like the one you've probably heard about the most and is probably the most fun and wacky, even though it just devolves into gunfights, is the one where you leave 1-star reviews, or just bad reviews in general. It doesn't have to be 1-star, you just get more rewards if you do 1-star, at various local businesses. But like I said, that's kind of a fun concept, but since all that happens is you give them a 1-star rating and a bunch of people show up to try and kill you, there's not really that much different there. I know from some stuff I've seen from other videos around that the insurance fraud minigame thing does come into play at some point, but I haven't experienced any of those. You also have just other stuff around the map. You have dumpster diving, you can find fancy or unique items, and by fancy I mean garbage, sometimes, in the dumpsters, as you would expect. But they are special items, I guess. Special items would be the correct word. But that's literally just going up to a dumpster and clicking a button. There are what are called hidden histories, where you literally just run around an area and click a button to listen to stuff that I don't even listen to because I'm not interested. And there's one where I couldn't find the last sign, so I gave up. There are wingsuit missions, which I haven't even tried yet. There are helicopter missions. There are missions where I say missions, side things. They're not even side quests necessarily. These are just the map markers that pop up. But anyway, there's this side thing where you can climb up on roofs and collect a drop to sell, and that's literally all it is. You go up, you click a button, you get money and XP. This is one of those things, and I am a person who, if I like the game enough, or it gives me a compelling enough reason to do so, is fine with a bunch of collectible stuff and markers on my map. But the problem I'm having with this is most of them aren't that interesting, and they don't take that much time. They take way longer to get to than they take to do. For example, the going up to a dumpster and clicking on it. You put a marker on your map, you drive over, you get out, you get it, you're done. That's it. There's nothing extensive there, there's nothing interesting there. Like, maybe you'll find a pizza box hat like I did, but is that worth it? No. I did pick up some golden car bits at some point, so maybe that's worth it, but I just don't think most of the side content is worth it. It feels very much like one of those open world games that was just like, well, we're open world and we have to fill it with something, and like they forgot all of the fun things that were in the previous games that were open world stuff and were fine and were funny and ridiculous. It just feels generic. There are also various side things you can do. You can take pictures of stuff around the world. Some of them will unlock fast travel, and some of them are just something to do. The fast travel, obviously, is convenient, but you have to wait to a certain point to actually do that, or at least I did in my game. I don't know if it bugged out, I wouldn't be surprised, but you have to wait to a certain point in the game to actually have it register, because it comes up with a little guide, so you have to take a picture within their specific parameters, and I was trying to do it without that before it registered or came up or whatever. It wasn't working, and I was like, I'm right here, I can see the thing, they give you hints, and it wasn't having it. It just wasn't having it. It was silly, because I was there, and it was on my minimap. If it's on my minimap already, why can I not? It's literally just taking a picture, alright? I don't need to go through any special kind of mission to learn how to take a picture with my phone. We live in 2022. I think somebody can figure that out. And speaking of bugs, I myself haven't actually encountered nearly as many as it sounded like I was going to, based on everything I saw before I played, but I have had a few. Most of them aren't big enough that they come to mind. There was some where NPCs would just continuously walk into items around the environment, because obviously their pathfinding went a little weird. There was one time where somebody tried to yank me out of a vehicle and it didn't register, and then it did register, and then I flew like 50 feet away from the car into a lamppost. There seems to be a bit of button delay, and again, I don't know if this is a bug or could be considered a bug, potentially, but there seems to be sometimes a large delay between when I hit a button and when I actually do something in the game. If it's not a bug, it is, number one, annoying, and number two, it's something that shouldn't happen and should be fixed, because when I hit a button, things should happen. Especially considering I am playing this on a current console. There have been a few others here and there as well that I can't even remember, but none of those have been game-breaking. The one game-breaking bug that I've found is that sometimes when I go in to change my clothes via the Style app or a wardrobe, and it seems to happen most with the app, so I suspect that may be the problem, sometimes it gets hung up. I will be going along fine, changing clothes, looking through clothes, and then I hit back to, go back to the gameplay, and it just gets stuck. I can rotate my character, I can zoom in and out on my character, but it won't exit. Sometimes if I wait long enough and then hit it again, it will exit. It freaks out a little bit and has some code come up instead of where it says outfit, clothes, whatever. It has code instead, but it will back out of it. I would say probably 80 to 90% of the time, but the other percent of the time, I have to completely shut down the game. I had to do that last night while I was playing, and thankfully it had saved everything I did up to that point, because to its credit, it does have a pretty decent autosave from what I can tell. But it was still annoying, and it just resets you at your home base, which is church. It resets you there every single time, almost every single time you die, just basically all the time, and it's just annoying, because then you just have to go to the other place, and the fast travel, I haven't found that many, and they seem to be few and far between. It's just another thing that makes it feel like it's just not worth it. So personally, where I think this gains the fairest criticism is the point where it just doesn't do enough. I fully understand resetting the series, because like I said, where do you go after Saints Row 4? You reach a level of ridiculousness where you do need to scale it back, and they hit that. But this reset of the franchise doesn't do enough differently to really establish itself as a dedicated and far-reaching expansion of the Saints Row universe. It goes, I think, too far back on itself, and ends up falling into a gray area of mostly unforgettable and unimpressive open-world games that end up just being generic, and there's a sense of, oh, we have this big world, we have to fill it with something, and that something isn't interesting. There is some of the humor and fun there, to some extent, but so much is taken up by the numbers open world collectathon nonsense that even when there is a bit of fun to be had, it just doesn't feel the same. It doesn't even have the wacky Saints Row combat on its side, because in my experience, that has mostly been excluded as well. Granted, yes, I did buy a longsword, because I went to a weapons shop and you can apparently customize weapons with different skins, and melee in particular. I bought a pickaxe, quote unquote, but one of the skins, or I don't know what you would really call it, one of the retoolings maybe, of that is longsword. I'm like, yes, obviously I'm buying a longsword because then I have a sword, but it's so cumbersome to use, which granted makes sense, but it's just a sword then also. I'm sure there are some wacky weapons eventually, and I have had some like laser guns, there's something that shoots grenades, but it's just not the level of wacky that the other Saints Rows were, specifically 3 and 4, from my limited experience with them. I don't think it's awful. I don't think it's nearly as awful as people are saying, but I really don't think it's worth it because it just feels like an open world game that occasionally has some silly stuff, and the Saints are also there. But that's just been my experience with the game thus far, and hopefully they will, number one, patch out some of the bugs eventually, because as far as I know there still hasn't been a patch, which is, you know, games release in a state all the time now, which is not okay and shouldn't be allowed, but most of them at least have a day one patch, and I don't know that this one got one. I mean, it may have been part of the giant download that I had to do, but I just don't know. But frankly, I just don't think it's worth it, and probably won't be worth it for a little while. If you have any thoughts on Saints Row, and specifically can tell me more about the series that I haven't played yet, because I do own some of them, I just haven't gotten around to playing them properly yet, and I do plan on doing that, because they sound like the superior experience. Please let me know down in the comments down below. Leave a like if you enjoyed this, and if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing, because I do one of these every Monday that I am able to play a new game. I do a whole bunch of other stuff on my channel. You can check that out, and I will see you next time.